Story request. This story is all true and happened to me. It takes a lot of understanding to actually believe it, but I found your channel and saw you were sharing people's stories. I want to get my story out there, so please, if you can, include this in a video. Thank you. This story is about my terrible experience with what I believe in some kind of black magic or a curse. It's very weird. I was 18 years old at the time, on my last year of high school. Recently broke up with my ex because she was a bad person. I'm not gonna get into details. I lived in an average town with a skate park, another park, a river, and a lot of teenagers. One day, I was hanging out with my friend Hunter at the skate park. He asked me if I was interested in the paranormal. I love the paranormal, so I said yes. I followed him past the park and near the river, where lots of us kids go to smoke and hang out. We said hi to a few friends, then me and Hunter made our way to a big field. I'm not sure if it was private property or not, but there were no signs, so I ignored it. We walked through a big field, roughly the size of a few football fields. I don't watch football, but it was the best description. We were walking along the edge near the tree line until eventually we reached a small opening. Hunter told me to watch my footing because there's a few tripwires here and there. We were talking through the narrow passage for a few minutes until we found a place to sit down and light a few joints. As he was pulling them out, he started telling me about what makes this place so damn creepy. He said one time he went here alone and he heard whispering sounds. He couldn't make it out, but it creeped him out, so he started to leave. He said he saw a very skinny, bony woman in a torn-up yellow dress holding a bundle of thorns in one hand and a handful of her hair in the other. It terrified him. He had to run past the lady, knocking her down as he ran through her. She screamed so loud, he said, just thinking about it makes his ears ring. Of course, I didn't believe his story. He's known for making big stories up to impress people, so I blew it off when he told me, though it was very interesting to me. A few days later, I started getting an urge to go to that place and explore. So the next day, I left the house telling my mom that I was going to school. I walked to the store to buy some soda chips and jerky and managed to talk to the guy at the register to sell me cigs. I was 18 years old. I just didn't have my ID yet. The air outside was crisp and refreshing, and it was only 5:30 a.m. in the morning, so it was kinda dark. Other than a dark blue tint everything had given, it was mid-October. I reached the park and the river. I turned into a big field, again walking slowly, just enjoying the freedom I felt. I was a big fan of Zelda, so I embraced the freedom of the woods as much as I could. I reached the narrow opening and walked through. I tripped on a tripwire because I completely forgot about them and gave off a laugh as I was chuckling at myself for being so clumsy. I reached the place me and Hunter smoked and lit a cigarette. Everything seemed pretty satisfying. I put in my headphones and listened to the Resident Evil Save Room theme, as it's a very calming song. I walked through my UN Explorer thoughts and places and the trees until I saw a lit candle. I slowly took off the headphones and thought it was odd, since it was only 6 in the morning and nobody was out there. I looked around and I saw another candle. My heart began to race as I felt like I was weightless. I was oddly happy I had something to explore. I walked to the other candle and I saw another. It was a trail of candles. I was excited. After I followed the candles for what seemed like an hour, I found that it was getting weird. I started smelling something that seemed like human feces and what seemed like perfume at the same time. The candle trail stopped, and I was left walking with nothing. I lit another cigarette and kept walking and walking until my ears started ringing. It hurt so bad I actually started tearing up. I fell to the ground and it stopped. I got up and I saw an old woman about 2 car lengths in front of me, just looking amazed about how someone got there. I walked to her slowly, acting normal, and asked her if there was a way out because I've had enough of this place. She didn't respond at all, and I waved my hand in front of her, and she licked her lips and said in a raspy voice, "How did you manage to get this far?" I asked her what she meant and told her about the candles, and she just responded with, "Nobody makes it this far." I started to get a little uneasy and asked her again where I could find a fast way out. She told me to follow her. I thought it was creepy, but I was sure she couldn't hurt me, even if she was that kind of person, because she looked very, very old and weak. As I followed her, I noticed what she was wearing. It looked like she was wearing some kind of leather robe with obvious random bird feathers. Her skin was pale and spotchy. To explain, I guess she had a very hunched back as well. I saw she was holding a basket with all kinds of mushrooms and flowers and jars of beetles, it seemed. I tried to break the ice and said, "So, you out here picking flowers?" She stopped walking, looked over her shoulder at me, and gave me a very, very disturbing glance, and just started walking again. I checked my phone as I walked behind her. It was 7:12 a.m. in the morning. I still had a whole day ahead of me before I needed to be anywhere. I felt very uncomfortable walking with this lady and began to think of ways I could just say I'm gonna just get out of there. But a part of me wanted to see what this was all about. Where was she leading me to? We seemed to be getting deeper and deeper into the woods. We walked for about 30 minutes. I'm actually surprised an old lady like her could keep walking like that. We eventually reached a surprisingly big and in good shape house. A big 2-story white house with a watchtower attached to one of the top rooms. The lady grunted and told me to wait in front of the house. She walked inside and I sat on a pile of rocks in front of the house. I was hungry, so I dug in my backpack for a bag of jerky or something, but I found flowers. I never touched my food at all. My bag was filled with flowers. Then it occurred to me when my ears rang. I passed out and woke up. I didn't know I passed out. I checked my phone again and realized something terrible. My phone freezes the time when I'm out of data. I had no idea what time it was or how long I was passed out for. My phone froze this whole time. I was confused. Did the lady take my stuff when I was passed out? I was confused and I was mad. I opened the door to the house only to find a group of people, all wearing leather robes and gloves. When I asked what this is, they all turned to my direction and started running at me. I ran in an unknown direction. I didn't think of what I was doing. All I could think was run, run, run. I was running for what seemed like forever, but I was convinced they are far away. I'm safe for now. Thus, I started walking, wondering if that was some kind of a cult. Who was the lady? I was walking until it got dark. I needed to sleep. I had no food, no energy, nothing but a lighter and cigs. I ended up making a fire and climbed a tree and used my jacket and backpack of flowers as a pillow on the tree. I was not gonna sleep on the ground, not in these woods. I spent most of the night awake, thinking about my brother and mom and what they're thinking right now. I was scared. I didn't want to die in here. When I got lighter out, I hopped down and stood there. What was I going to do? I'm lost in the woods with dangerous people looking for me. I spent a little while thinking about home. Then I started walking in a random direction, hoping I'd find something. After what seemed like hours of walking, it started getting dark again. I was so hungry, I was on the verge of tears. I lost all hope. I jumped when I heard a whisper from behind me, but I froze. The whisper was a calming voice. It was a woman's voice, the sound of a mother talking to her child. I turned behind me and I saw the woman Hunter was talking about, but instead of looking dead, she looked beautiful. She had long, silky brown hair, blue crystal eyes, and the softest skin. Her dress looked new, and the sight of her would calm anyone. She walked towards me and put her hand on my shoulder. She slowly kissed me, and my vision went white. I woke up on the edge of the entrance to the woods. I was still bruised badly, and I was starving. Worst of all of my bones were hurting very badly. I stood up and practically limping all the way home, but before I left the entrance of the field, I looked back and sure enough, I saw the lady. She was standing at the entrance of the woods. At that moment, I felt comfort that she was watching over me, and I walked home sore and starving. When I got home, my mom screamed my name. She said I was gone for a whole week. I don't understand how I was gone for a week. It turned into a big deal with the cops. I knew nobody would believe me, so I just told them another story. I did some research, and I came to the conclusion that the old lady was a witch, and the group of hooded people were a cult. What disturbs me is the rock I was sitting on at the house. It was smooth and flat. I found that cults use flat objects to sacrifice humans or animals to some kind of demon or god of sorts. A few days after this happened, I paid a visit to the place again. The entrance was overgrown. I didn't understand because it's only been a matter of days. I managed to get past the fallen tree blocking the passage, but there was nothing but a river. It's like everything else disappeared. I never saw that beautiful lady ever again, despite looking very often. I couldn't find anything online about things like that. It's all gone, without a trace. Though, I'll never forget what happened, ever in my life. My story. Hi. Want to begin by saying I love the channel, keep it up. I don't want my name mentioned or give any information, but you can use my story on your channel for a subscriber video. To begin, I would like to make it clear that I come from a religious background. Therefore, I've always heard stories growing up, especially from my grandparents, about ghosts and jinns and supernatural beings. It was the beginning of February 2012. I had turned 24 years old, and like any guy out there, I loved cars, so my father gifted me my Audi A3 Turbo. I remember clearly a week after my birthday, my father and myself and my younger brother had gone to Pakistan for a holiday. My younger brother is 4 years younger than me. It was both our first time going to Pakistan to meet the beautiful and wonderful extended family. The first few days were a meet and greet of sorts. We were paraded around to all the family. I have to be honest, it was pretty boring. But soon, we began traveling to different areas and sightseeing the landscapes, which were beautiful. The arrangements had been made for our flight back to England, and we were doing some last-minute shopping when my younger brother began feeling ill. I remember him in the car telling me he was feeling ill. Of course, Pakistan is a hot country, therefore we first thought the weather was getting to him. By nightfall, he was in and out of consciousness. My father and myself were very worried. But what happened next, I will never forget for the rest of my life. It was 2 a.m, and I woke up to the sound of laughing. My brother and I were sharing a room. I was fully awake. I heard the laugh again, but it was the laugh of a woman. I switched the lights on and saw my brother had his back to me. He was sitting in the center of his bed, legs tucked under him. I called him by his name. He didn't reply. In a country like Pakistan, where most people sleep outside because of the heat, that room was freezing cold. I left the room. Don't ask me why. When I think back, I believe I kind of sensed something. My father came into the room, and my brother was crying. My father got upset at me, thinking we had probably been fighting. but then my brother spoke, and he spoke in a woman's voice. My father and I kind of looked at each other. He kept repeating the same word, I'm sorry, but it was a woman's voice. The next day, the local imam from the mosque came. He was a noted imam who learned the local kids Quran and would always be reciting Quran. The imam had just been walking past our house when he decided to come say hi. As he got to the door, he had not knocked, and my brother, who had been fine eating his breakfast, began swearing the most foul swears, and he was swearing in Urdu, and my brother's Urdu is not perfect, nor is mine, but he was speaking fluent Urdu, and it's not the type of Urdu that's spoken nowadays. It was an older version. His face changed. It seemed to contort, and then seemed to be normal, then twist. It was so hard to explain, but there was that woman's voice again. The imam spoke to my father for a moment, then he left. When he left the house, my brother seemed to calm down. My father took my brother to the doctors. While they went there, I was told by my father to help the imam, who came and began looking around our house within moments, and I believe I was shocked even mentioning this. He found bags of small black leather pouches, 6 of them in total, and mysteriously around the back of our house, below the fence leading to the garage, there was a strange symbol that was marked in red. After the imam took these, my brother got better and better, and only recently did my father explain to me that while we were there, an extended family friend had approached my father and asked if my father would arrange a marriage between his daughter and my younger brother, but my father refused. It's quite common, apparently, that arrangements are made as such to help other people get family members as daughters or sons here abroad to England. But again, my father refused, and when he had booked our flights back, this had caused the other family to turn to magic to try and change my father's mind. Even today, sometimes my brother claims he dreams of a woman who has long hair and wears red clothes. It was a pretty bad holiday, I guess. Caution from a spirit. Dear Mr. Horror Studio 1, my name is Josh, and I was wanting to share this experience with you and your subscribers. I hope you get around to reading it and sharing it with your community soon. Please let me know if you do, okay? You're the best. Stay genuine. HS1. So as I said, my name is Josh, and during the time of this experience, I was about 10 or 11 years old. I'm 22 years old now. I had a few friends and family over for a 4th of July celebration. My best friend Jake, my good friend Dominic, and my favorite first cousin Brian. We were all hanging out doing what kids did back in 2004 to 2005. Can't exactly recall the year. We were out running around with Nerf guns and shooting off fireworks, having a fantastic 4th of July. Later, after the celebration ended, they all stayed the night. We played Halo 3 late into the night, so after a short time, Halo was starting to get a little dull, because my cousin was just stomping on all of us. So we decided to go down into the basement to rummage around in all the old things my parents have accumulated over the years. After searching through countless boxes of old magazines and house decorations, Jake came across a box that said, "Do not open." He asked me why it said that, so I just replied with, "I have no idea. I've never seen that before." Probably because it was buried under nearly every other box. So being the kids that we were, we decided to open the box. Inside the box was a doll with a red yarn-like hair holding a yarn rose. Under this doll was a blanket covering a box that said Ouija on it. I remember all these details because my cousin, who was slightly older and therefore more wise, saw the door and the Ouija board box and backed away with his hands in the air, yelling, "Hell no, I am not messing with any of that." Looking back on it now, we should have just listened to him and put it all back. but we carried the box upstairs along with the doll. I showed the doll to my mother, asking if it was hers. She said it was her mother's doll and it was a gift to her, but it creeped her out so much, so she kept it anywhere where she couldn't see it. I then showed her the Ouija board box, but she paid no attention to it, probably because she was still helping my dad clean after the celebration. So I brought it back upstairs so we could all see what would happen if we played with it. At the time, I just thought it was a board game of some sort, and I was kind of weirded out to why my cousin would react the way he did to such a silly board game. So I get upstairs, and Jake and Dominic are just sitting around asking about the Ouija board. My cousin at this point left to go back with his family, so we couldn't really get our questions answered. I decided to open the box, then test it out for myself. There was a small drinking glass, which I thought was odd, and a board with the alphabet and some numbers on it. We read the directions and started asking questions. We were also laughing because we thought it was pretty dumb to be asking a board game questions. It took us a bit to figure out how to actually use the board, because we didn't normally read the directions to play a board game. So after we finally figured out how to play, we started asking some serious questions like, "What is your name?" After the first question, we got no response, so we asked again, this time all together, "What is your name?" The glass begins to move, moving to the J very slowly, followed by a slow glide over to A, followed by a slightly faster glide to the K, and ending off with an even faster glide to the E. After this, we began to accuse each other of moving the glass and that someone was joking around. All of us had a kind of blank looks on our faces, like we saw a ghost or something. We continued to ask questions like, "Is there something you would like to tell us?" The glass rapidly moved to yes, almost making me fall over to keep up with the glass. We then followed by asking, "What would you like to tell us?" The glass began to skim around rapidly to spell out FRIENDS. We then asked, "Are you our friend?" I don't remember if it moved at all here or not, so we asked once again, "Are you our friend?" This time with more enthusiasm. The glass moved slightly in a circular motion over the yes. All of us sighed in relief. We then asked, "Do you have a last name?" With no response, Jake then quickly asked after a short pause, "Is there anyone else here with you?" It began to spell out Rose. None of us knew of any Rose, so we just continued to ask questions. At this time, nearly every single question we asked ailed no response, until the last question we decided to ask, "What would you like to tell us?" The glass at this time began to slowly spell out CLOSE, spelling close, and at this time, we had no idea what this could mean, so we decided to end off the game by saying goodbye to the spirit. After ending the game, we all went off to sleep in the living room so we could all watch TV until we fell asleep. On my way, I see my mom carrying the creepy doll up the stairs with her into her room. We all fell asleep watching Family Guy or Aqua Teen Hunger Force or something silly like that. A few hours passed, and I wake up thirstier than I've ever been. I walked into the kitchen for a glass of water and looked at the stove to see what time it was, and I couldn't see the clock. It was as if something was blocking the timer, so I couldn't see it. I rubbed my eyes and could barely make out the figure of someone sitting in front of the clock. Thinking it was my cat, I walked over to move her out of the way, and as I neared closer to the stove, I can see that it's not my cat who's sitting in front of the clock. It was the doll. That creepy-ass doll was sitting there, in my way with its red yarn hair and creepy grin. At the time, I didn't remember seeing my mom walking up the stairs with the doll in her arms. Instead, I hurried over and slapped it out of the way so I could see what time it was. 3:13 a.m. I grabbed my glass of water and went back to the couch to go back to bed. It was only while I was laying there with my eyes wide open, looking up at the ceiling, that I remembered that I saw my mom carrying the doll up the stairs and into her room with her. I was absolutely petrified at this point. I laid on the couch with the blanket pulled all the way over my head until I heard something moving on the back of the couch. Thinking it was the doll, I started to shake uncontrollably. I heard it make its way up to the armrest of the couch at my feet. Still shaking, I managed to sneak a peek at my feet to make sure they were still there. It was my damn cat. I've never been more relieved in my entire life, but now I hate cats. Pulling the blanket off my head to get some cool air, I noticed that Jake was not on the other couch where I saw him like 3 minutes ago. I slide up on my arm to look into the kitchen where I see him around the corner. I get up because at this point, I have to pee really badly. I walk past the doll that was on the ground and make my way to the bathroom. I can see that the light is on and that the door is shut, so I just figure Jake is in there. So I make my way into my parents' bathroom instead. I finish and make my way downstairs to see the door is still shut, but there is no light coming from under the door now. I quietly whisper, "Jake, are you okay in there?" No response. I ask again. Still, no response. After a long pause to listen for any kind of response, I hear what sounds like something sliding on a plastic board. I rush to the door and try to force it open. It didn't budge. I rush into the kitchen to find the key to the door that my parents keep hidden in an old vase that my grandmother gave them. Breathing heavily at this time and making a lot of noise, Dominic wakes up to see what's going on. He walks into the kitchen asking, "Hey, where's Jake?" Right after he asked this, the doll that was laying on the floor moves towards me very slightly. We both jump back, scared out of our wits, yelling profanities at the top of our lungs, obviously waking my parents. As Dominic continues to work to get the key out of the vase, I explain to my parents what is going on. My mom sees the doll on the ground and asks why it's down in the kitchen. She was just as confused as I was. My dad is pounding furiously on the bathroom door, shouting to see if Jake is okay. "Jake, you okay in there?" he said while looking at us. Shortly after he asked this, the doll, still on the ground, slides a good 2 or 3 feet towards us. All of us yelling and screaming in response as my mom slowly inched up to the doll, grabbing it and bringing it outside to dispose of it. All of us take a second to catch our breath and regain our thoughts. A few minutes pass and we finally find the key at the bottom of a drawer. It's where we keep towels and things in. We open the door to the bathroom expecting to find Jake unconscious on the ground. Instead, we find Jake facing the wall playing with the Ouija board. My dad approaches Jake cautiously and grabs his shoulder. Just as my dad grabs his shoulder, Jake turns to us with a ferocious grin. Jake fainted right there after he turned to us, and I swear to you, I felt a strong presence leave the room right after he hit the ground. My dad picks up Jake and carries him to the couch while I explain where we found the doll and board. Instead of chewing me out for messing around with the board and doll, he grabs the board and the doll my mom set outside and throws them in the bonfire pit we have in our backyard. My mom calls Jake's parents to tell them everything that happened, and I promise you that they were at our house less than 30 seconds after the phone call was over. During this time, my dad has used an entire can of lighter fluid on the doll and the board. I think it's safe to say we won't be seeing either of those again. Jake's parents and my parents are talking in the living room while Dominic and I sit in the kitchen in silence. I hear Jake's parents saying that we could never see each other again. As soon as I hear that, I begin to cry uncontrollably. Jake is my best friend, and a world without him just isn't a world worth living in. I thought to myself as Dominic rubs my back, explaining that everything will work out. Jake wakes up, not knowing what is going on. I remember him saying something like, "What are you two doing here?" to his parents as they all explain what happened to him. Jake refuses and says that he was on the couch the whole time. After Jake comes through and begins to wake up, Dominic and I go sit next to him on the couch. I ask him with a shaky voice, "You okay, buddy?" Smiling, he says, Yeah, why? Like nothing ever happened. I just hugged him, saying, I can't lose you, man. You're gonna be my best man one day, remember? Jake laughs and says, well, you're gonna be my best man too one day. Both of us smile and high-five each other. Dominic asked if we were hungry, so we make our way into the kitchen to make a pizza. Our parents still talking. Well, looks like he's back to normal. We all end up sitting down to share a pizza as the sun rises. And in the end, it's as if everything is back to normal. Years later, Jake, Dominic, and I are enjoying our summer between freshman and sophomore year of high school. All of us still best friends, hang out any chance we get. All of us are happy as any normal high school hockey player could be. Until the night of June 23rd, 2009. It was on this day that my entire world was flipped upside down and everything I once enjoyed became a thing of the past. In the early morning hours of June 23rd, 2009, something very strange had happened. I was sleeping on the couch in the living room because it was much more comfortable than my bed, and I woke up from my sleep to a strange light outside of the living room window. Thinking it was just a car from one of the neighbors, I tried to fall back asleep. The light, however, would not go away. I looked at it once again, and it was moving up and down outside of the window very slowly. Like a seed of dandelion, the light continued to move from one side of the window to the other. I knew this could not have been a car or a flashlight because the sun was coming up, and the light was not like that of a car or anything I've ever witnessed before. I'm not entirely sure how to describe it, really. Anyways, I sit up to investigate the light even more. I move my feet as if to stand up from the couch, but just as I did, the light bolts off into the sky. I knew this couldn't have been a UFO or something like that, because the light was about the size of a golf ball. So I didn't think much of it at the time, and just went back to bed. Hours later, I wake up to my mom sobbing uncontrollably with my dad on one knee over me with tears in his eyes. Panicking, I ask right away, what's wrong? My dad, looking back to my mom, says, come to your room with us. We need to talk about something. I quickly leap off the couch and walk with them up to their room. I knew something was off from the start because both of my parents were crying, and my dad has his hand on my back the entire time, walking side by side with me. We get into their room, and my mom and dad turn to me and say, Jake's dead. I pretended I didn't hear them say that and asked, what? With a shaky voice. He killed himself, my dad says as he hugs me tight. I didn't hug back. As he holds me in his arms, I can feel him shake and I begin to cry. I can remember that my dad's shirt was soaked in tears. Within seconds of him telling me this, he let go after a minute or two and I just collapsed to the ground. I couldn't even catch my breath. Every breath I could take was followed by an uncontrollable flow of tears. I couldn't believe what they told me. I was just so shocked that Jake would do something like this. He was the happiest person I've ever known. He was so smart and talented at everything he did. The possibilities for him were endless. I thought to myself, how could someone so strong do something like this? What made him do it? All these questions and no answers at all. I looked at my phone and saw over 100 messages from people from school and other friends and family saying they're sorry about Jake. I was skimming through all the messages and saw one from Jake at 3:13 a.m. It said CLOSE. Close. And in this moment, I remember everything that happened all those years ago. To this day, I still don't know what Jake was trying to tell me. We hung out every day and we were best friends since kindergarten. I have not been the same since this happened. I don't really talk to anyone anymore and tend to keep to myself now. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about him. He was my best friend, and I would have done absolutely anything to see him happy. I miss you, Jake. I wish I could see you again, buddy. I know I will one day. Josh.